Vasiliy Lomachenko went out there and had a turn back the clock night against George Kambosos, right? He went out there and defied Father Time in a lot of ways. I mean, this man is 36 years old in the lightweight division. When you're talking about lightweight, that is, or any of these smaller divisions, right? You're talking about divisions that are historically dominated by younger guys. They're ones in which you rely on your speed. They're ones in which you rely on your reaction time and your reflexes and things like that. All of this stuff that no matter how hard you train and how good you are, those are the things that really start to go as you get older. And Vasiliy Lomachenko has seen him go. We can look and we can see that he is not exactly the same fighter as he used to be at 36 years old. Nevertheless, the man's so skilled. He prepares so well. He does so good. Technique is so flawless that he's still able to go out there and compete amongst the best. So now, we go out there and we see him embarrass Kambosos, right? Outclasses the man. On the one hand, I just want to take one little pause and think for a second. Think about this. He was supposed to fight Kambosos, right? Kambosos went out there and beat Teofimo, right? Remember, Teofimo beats Loma. Then he goes over and loses to Kambosos. So Kambosos has all the belts. Lomachenko was supposed to get that fight. That was going to be the one in which he snatched all those belts back up. But, it wasn't meant to be. All of a sudden, we see him over there for a year in Ukraine defending his country. He comes back. Things are all different. Goes over there, ends up getting the fight against Haney. And we're like, man, look at the way the boxing god smiled on this man. He was about to have his opportunity. It was this close. Then it was snatched away from him through things that he had absolutely no control over. But lo and behold, when he comes back, we see that he's sitting there and Devin Haney's ready there waiting for him. And we know how that fight turned out. I feel like sitting back all this time later, the vast majority of people feel like Loma should have got that decision. Whether you thought he should have got it or not, you cannot deny the fact that he went out there against a young, hungry, should I call Devin Haney ferocious? I'll call him a technician, right? Just a young, hungry technician, a guy who's operating at the highest level. And he went out there and he put on a great performance. Even if you think that he didn't deserve the victory, Loma still went out there and put on a great performance, right? One that a lot of guys didn't think he was going to put on. One that a lot of guys thought that he was past his prime and he didn't have that left in him at that point. Right, super heartbreak. We saw him in the locker room in the post fight, and the way he was just he felt like, man, there's no chance left for me. How am I going to get all the belts? Haney's going to move up, and everything is going to get fractured and stuff. And what are we going to do? What's going to be left? And then one thing leads to another, and we see him get this fight with Kambosos, and he goes out there and again absolutely outclasses the competition. Right, absolutely outclasses the competition. Right, and one thing that we got to note is Kambosos stepped in there against Teofimo Lopez, and he stepped in there twice against Devin Haney. Right, younger, arguably more athletic, arguably stronger, right? Because we know Lomachenko is typically a smaller guy. He only moved up to lightweight for the bigger fights. So these younger, stronger, more athletic fighters, right? In Devin Haney and Teofimo Lopez. Neither one of those dudes were able to go out there and stop George Kambosos. But that's what we saw Loma do, right? At 36 years old. So now he's got the belt immediately. During the fight, after the fight, we see Twitter blowing up and we're looking at it. Gervonta Davis and Shakur Stevenson are jumping right on there, right? Next week, we got Emmanuel Navarrete jumping in there and he could potentially be getting a belt. Like, dude, think about that. We got 4 belts, 4 different champions at lightweight. Gervonta Davis, Shakur Stevenson, Loma, and then if Navarrete wins a belt. But either way, we're going to have a new champion, even if Navarrete doesn't get the win. But the reason I keep mentioning Navarrete is because he's the guy who's the favorite. He's the guy who's expected to win, and he's the guy who would bring the much bigger buzz should we be looking at a matchup. So no matter how this plays out, dude, this ended up being a phenomenal performance by Loma. Put him right back into, I don't want to necessarily say the driver's seat, but he's right up there along with everybody else in the division in the sense that everybody's talking about him. Now all of a sudden we've got guys who are talking about potentially wanting to fight him, because you got to remember, for the longest, nobody wanted to tangle with this dude. Nobody wanted to get in there and mix it up with him just because of how technical he was, how difficult he was to deal with, the style and everything that he brought and all the different things. And he even mentioned it in the build up to this fight. But now all of a sudden he's a little bit older, a little bit slower. He isn't quite exactly what he used to be, but he still has the name. And now he's got a belt. So now all of a sudden there's people who want to fight him. Now all of a sudden we got people who want to jump in there with him. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens at this point, right? It's going to be really interesting to see how these fights get made, who he steps in there with, right? Because you got people squawking saying that Top Rank doesn't want to make fights for this fight and that fight. And what we're going to see here, we know how promoters either work or don't work together and everything else. Look, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I want to see the best fight the best. I don't understand how any fan could be out there and not want to see the absolute best fight the best. Okay, and I don't know who's going to come out if all of these dudes start tangling at 135 pounds. The only thing I know for sure is that I'm going to be super excited to watch every fight, and every one of them is going to be top-level guys competing amongst each other in what could just at any time be round of the year, fight of the year type action because of the people that we're dealing with. So, let me know what you guys think. What did you think about this performance that Loma put on against Kambosos? He was a big favorite going in, but I don't think a lot of people expected him to dominate the way that he did. And I certainly don't think a lot of people expected him to go out there and be able to get the stoppage like he did. So what did that mean? How do you think he looks? Is he going to be able to continue to compete at this level? Is he going to be able to continue to put on these types of performances when he steps in there against the better competition like a Shakur or a Javante? How's he going to look against those guys? What fights are actually going to get made, right? Because that's really the most important thing. We can talk about what we want. We can talk about how this thing would match up. But it's about what fights are going to get made. Who are we actually going to see in the rings against each other? Let me know what you guys think.